Hi again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Around the Town with Chuck. My name is Chuck Guglielmo, a weekly interview show where we talk with interesting people. And today we are taping the show on Thursday, January the 24th. And my guest today is Angelo Velotta. Of course, Angelo's been on the show before. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, Chuck, thanks for having me back. It's great to be here. And it's funny, I was watching, you said I was here, and when I was here last, it was sunny June, and the Cleveland Cavaliers were just announced the 2016 NBA champions. So I looked up, as of January 24th, the year they won it all, they were 30-12. They are 9-40 right now, and not anywhere near the championship. And it's kind of funny, we ended the interview near the end. I had said, and it seemed like a wild idea, I said, LeBron James should retire now, go out on top, he's done the greatest thing. And it was kind of like a crazy thought, but now you look back, it might have actually been the right, because I remember you're like, oh, that's a wild thought.
Yeah.
And at June of 2016, it was a little wild, but wouldn't we like things a little bit better if we could have just ended on top there?
You got that right. You got that right, Angelo. Of course, Angelo Velotta is still with the Gazette newspapers, covering sports, and now I understand you also do some little announcing work for the Edgewood Warriors. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm the PA announcer for the girls basketball team and the wrestling, the few matches they have, and I do some fill-in for the boys basketball and the volleyball as well. But it's fun. I enjoy doing that. And
of all those sports announcing, which one would you say you enjoy the best?
Basketball, I've always grown up playing and watching it, so getting to do basketball is pretty fun. And the starting lineups for basketball, it's kind of a special thing, no matter if it's boys or girls basketball, but there's that kind of enthusiasm in the air. So I like that. And then, now I'm doing a whole new sport that I've had to learn really, really quickly in hockey.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that too. Angelo, I thought you did the boys' games because I remember when we were at the Erie Insurance Arena, you were doing the announcing for the Spartans and the Warriors.
Yeah, I did do it for that game, and I'm doing some. I was doing it all the time, but then just with different schedules and everything, I'm not doing them all the time. However, I'm still well-versed in watching them, and that was a great display that they put on at the Erie Insurance Arena. Great experience for both Edgewood and Conneaut. But, I'm pretty in with knowing what's going on there, and I see Edgewood's head coach John Bowler comes to a lot of the girls' basketball games to support. So we're always talking about the season and what games they have going on that week, and coming off a big win over Jefferson, I believe it was 92-46, and the Warriors are 12-0, 8-0 in the conference now.
And ranked pretty high right now in the states, right?
They are ranked, I had to look it up, they're ranked 13th. They received 17 points. Now, the interesting thing in Division III is the LeBray Vikings are ranked 10th. Edgewood beat them 61-51 on December the 14th. LeBray, though, is the defending district champions of Division III. So it'll be a big showdown coming up at January 29th. They beat them on the road, so they get to play it at the Warrior Gymnasium on the 29th. And you got to think if they stay undefeated between now and then and knock off LeBray, that any judges paying attention would think that you have to move Edgewood up a few more spots.
How's attendance been for the Edgewood boys basketball team that they're playing so well?
Oh, they get a great turnout.
Home and away?
Yeah, from what I can tell, I'm not as sure about the away other than the Erie game, which it seemed like a decent amount of people came. That's fun for the kids and parents too. But the home games, the student section is very big. The girls basketball team comes and supports, but a lot of fans as well. I remember and this was even started last year because they were 21-4 even last year. But I remember how jammed it was on the Friday that Poland had come to town, and Poland was undefeated at the time. They were ranked pretty high, and Edgewood won pretty decidedly, I think by 7 or 9 points. And I was announcing that one, and I remember thinking, wow, this place is probably the most jammed I'd ever seen. And then they hosted Chardon, which that team travels well, so they have great fans support there. And
the Hilltoppers.
The Hilltoppers. So it was pretty cool to take in some of those games. and it really feels like a big time atmosphere each time. And then they're getting it done too, so the fans keep coming back. I mean, John Bowler's doing a great job with them, and I think they've had a lot of really talented athletes in the past, but
Well, they start 5 seniors.
this is a very solid and fluid starting 5. They're all getting in double digits, from Kanicki with 17 down to Anderson with 10. But then you look, Anderson's also averaging over 6 assists a game. Baldwin's averaging a double-double. So 1 through 5, and Sam German's averaging almost 6 steals a game, which is pretty impressive. I mean, the amount of steals. And I know that's something they talked about at the Erie Insurance Arena. He was talking post-game about, they're not out there saying, well, I need to get this many shots or baskets. They're talking about how many steals can we get, how many, team plays can we make. So when you can get that going for a high school team, look out, it could be pretty good.
I'm excited for them, and I think it's going to continue. And the impressive thing, of course, I've only seen Edgewood play Conant because I cover the Spartans, is that there are players on that team that are capable of going out scoring 30 to 40 points a night, but they all have this balanced scoring. Like in the Conant game, all 5 of the players averaged double digits, from 20 down to 12.
Yeah, I mean, I have it here. Kanicki's averaging 17. Zappatelli's averaging 13 and a half. Baldwin's averaging 12. German 11, and Anderson 10. So the fact that they could average that every game shows that there's a consistency and that something's working. And I think if they could keep up that team style play, because you're right, those guys, there's a few especially that could have the night where they go off, like James Harden at 61, in Madison Square Garden. They could do that, but what's great is they don't have to have that pressure, because anyone who played basketball knows, even the greatest shooters, you have those nights where you're just not in rhythm, you're not feeling it. So if you're one of the only 2 people that could score, and you're having an off night, that puts a lot of pressure on yourself, because now you feel like you may be letting down the team. But with this Edgewood team, this 2018-19 season, they don't have to rely on just one. They have guys who are a little bit more prolific offensively, but if anybody can get you at least 10, I mean, you're talking about 50-plus points right there off the get-go, without even having to go to the bench.
Of course, basketball, high school basketball, is a 22-game regular season schedule. Angelo, is it conceivable? I haven't seen the rest of their schedule. You talked about a game coming up here at the end of the month. Is it conceivable that they could win all regular season games?
I wouldn't put it past them. LeBray on the 29th, it's the second time. Both teams are going to be pretty hungry for that one, because Edgewood's looking and maybe thinking, well, should we be ranked above them? But, to LeBray's credit, they are the reigning district champ, and LeBray's going to want to make a statement that, we are still the top team in the area. They only play Poland once this year because of the tier switch. That'll be a big one. I don't know the exact date, but it's somewhere in mid-February. That'll be a tough one, too. Poland is always a very strong team. And, I mean, every game. I saw John today, and he said that he just takes it one game at a time. Would I put it past him to do it? No. But even if they take a loss, sometimes those things could be, you don't like them at the time. But sometimes those are a good little reminder of the things to fine-tune before the playoffs, because ultimately Edgewood, I think, would really, and all the teams, anyone that is in the playoffs, would like to get a district championship, and they came so close last year with the loss to Lake Catholic. So I think if they had to trade off a loss with a high-quality team now and get exposed on what we might need to fine-tune, not necessarily a glaring hole,
They
but
would be
something,
happy to do it.
But if you said you're going to win the district champion, but Poland's going to beat you by 2, but you'll take something away from that game, I think they would take it. Now, that being said, they may be able to run the table and still get district championship, but I know there's a few other teams that they'll have to really compete with to do so.
Do you have any idea who are some of the teams they might face in the tournament?
It's going to be different this year, because
I heard that.
they were in the different tiers. So normally they're in the bracket with area teams like Perry, the Pirates, Harvey's usually around there, and then Jefferson, and usually Lake Catholic is the one you're facing near the end in recent years. And I think Notre Dame Cathedral lands usually. Now this year, it'll be different because they're playing different teams. They've been playing LeBray and Champion and Crestview and Newton Falls instead of the other tier. And the AAC is so huge. It's hard to keep them all straight. But last year they were playing more of Niles, Struthers, Poland. So I don't know exactly who would be in the tournament. That'll be an interesting thing too, because maybe it is and maybe it isn't. Even teams they're facing this year, which then that throws a whole other wild card in. And how do you match up with maybe a team you know very little about?
Any parochial schools in that tournament that Edgewood will be facing, schools that can recruit? And what do you think about that situation, the public schools having to face some of these bigger parochial schools that can recruit?
It's an interesting thing. I've heard a lot of different people's takes on it. Everything from there should be separate tournaments and separate championships to, hey, you got to face who's in front of you. There's a little truth to both. But as a coach, and I'm only at the junior high level for soccer, but I love doing it. We've had to face some teams that have had extraordinary amounts of talent and may be able to pull from different leagues. And I was just thought, well, you got to face who's in front of you. So it makes your team better. It might not always be the greatest draw that you're hoping for, and maybe in some regards could be disadvantage, or some people may say unfair, but I think that getting challenged makes your guys better, or girls, whatever sport you're doing, and you develop that character and testable fortitude where it may help if you knock off that team too. It feels so good. So I don't know if they probably won't have to play, say, Lake Catholic this year, but say they were able to knock off Lake Catholic last year in the district championship, you feel really good because you're beating a team of that caliber. So it makes the, you savor the victory. It's a little sweeter.
Mm-hmm. Angela, let's switch over to the girls, because you do cover the Edgewood Warrior girls basketball, as you said. Mm-hmm. Now, they're almost the opposite of the boys' mm-hmm. team. How do you see attendance at their games?
It's not as strong as the boys. However, a lot of the boys do come, which is nice that they will come and support the girls. And, Randy Vensel's in his first year as coach, but he's spending a lot of time trying to put things in motion that are critical for the team going forward. So, and he knew coming off the cuff that you can't do it all in 1 year. So you have to put some things in place. No matter who's coming in as a coach, you're always, like, when I remember you're obviously a first-year coach at some point. So you have to, not whether who's better or worse, but you're going to have your own little ways of doing things. So he's trying to put that in motion and try to get the girls to work hard and work on the fundamentals. And the fans, it's not as large, but it's nice to see the students come, and a lot of the parents still come. And, they're trying to just get better at some of the basics and put something together. And, that's the main thing. And you have the realistic expectations that, okay, we're going to struggle some. But I know when I interviewed him before the season, he just wanted them to play hard, make some memories that will last, and then start the foundation for going forward.
Very good. Of course, Angelo Velotta is my guest. We're taping the show on Thursday, January 24th. Angelo also writes sports for the Gazette newspapers in addition to the work he does at Edgewood. But before we get to the Gazette newspapers, how did you get connected to doing the Edgewood games?
Well, I had started writing for the Star Beacon before that, and so I covered Edgewood sometimes. And then with the Gazette, I picked it back up and was covering both Ashtabula and then the Lake County Tribune, able to cover some Lake County games. And they had needed someone to do PA announcing. It so happened right around when I was at a couple of games, and they said, you did broadcasting? So I said, yeah, I'd love to do it. And like I said, basketball's a blast. And then wrestling kind of came out of that. But, getting to do starting lineups and try to get everybody pumped up and get the kids pumped up for the game is a fun thing.
You did a good job at the arena.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was cool to get to do it at the Erie Insurance Arena. And, I'm sure everybody, Connie, I know Tim Tobacco said, their kids had a blast. They didn't realize that the Erie Insurance Arena was so big. I mean, it felt like you were at a Cavs game, really. I mean, it was as big of a similar arena, so it was just a fun thing for everybody.
And having it during the Christmas break was,
Yeah.
because it was at a weird time. It was like at 3:45 on a Friday
Yeah,
afternoon.
I think it was 3:40 because they had a home Bayhawks game later that night. So
Right.
they did a thing where if you had bought the tickets, you would be able to be a part of that as well.
Let's move over to the Gazette newspapers now. You said you worked at the Star Beacon for a while. Now you're with the Gazette newspapers.
Actually, just over 4 years.
Just renewed my subscription for the
Okay.
next 2 years. Love the paper. We
Yeah.
think Martha Sorahan does a great job covering Conneaut News and North Kingsville News in both the Buckeye and Conneaut
Mm-hmm.
school districts. She does an outstanding job. And of course, we had Byron Russell on my show here not very long
Okay.
ago. First time I had a chance to meet Byron. And who else covers sports? Angelo, you, Byron, and Rich?
Rich Kelly, yep.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And there you can't really concentrate on covering one team because you guys tried to put game results in for all the county teams, right? So do you like that, or would you like to be familiar with one team?
Well, I give hats off to Byron because I'm not 100% sure on. I think Rich goes and covers similar to the way I do, but I can't 100% say. But Byron will go and check in on 3, 4, 5 games in one evening.
That's what he said. Yeah.
Which is really impressive. And then I will go to a specific game. So what's nice is a lot of times I do Lake County, Madison a lot, Riverside, Perry, some Menor, but then I'll still do some Edgewood and some schools out here. And I can kind of rotate it. So, okay, I saw Perry and Riverside recently. Now I'll try to get a Madison game in. So there's so many options. But Byron really helps us out because he allows us to focus on individual articles while he will do, snippets covering 3, 4, 5 different games in one night. And he'll do that multiple times in a week.
Mm-hmm. The sports of football and basketball, high school football and high school basketball that you cover, you do cover a lot of the Lake County schools for Gazette. Do you see any difference in play style between the Lake County kids and the Ashtabula County kids?
I think more so you see a difference, whether it's a good team in Ashtabula County or a good team in Lake County. You see the difference of the programs that are at a higher level and then the ones that are, more at a middle or lower level at the time being. But there's good and, mediocre in both. But I mean, I remember telling you about the last time I was here, you had asked what was a game that stood out. It's hard to compare when you see Menor St. Ignatius go 63-56 and both quarterbacks throw for over 400 and both teams run for over 200. And it's funny too, mentioning you said another game, and I had said the Perry Holy Name playoff game. Well, I didn't remember the guy's name. I had mentioned a running back that I thought was going to be really good. I couldn't remember his name. He was a very humble kid, and he ran for around 400 or so plus yards and 7 touchdowns, most all in the first half, and they only threw the ball 6 times and they won. Well, he ended up going to the University of Toledo. He was actually the heir apparent to Kareem Hunt. And I looked it up today because I was trying to remember this. Shaquille Seymour is the name of the kid, and he ran for over 700 yards his first year with 12 touchdowns, and he actually had the school record of 5 touchdowns in a game against Bowling Green, where I graduated from. And then he ran for over 500 last year, so it was good to see that he was still he's playing Division I football and starting there. But you do see a lot of talented players come. I mean, Menor, we saw Noah Potter coming out of the defensive line for Menor. He's going to, I believe, Ohio State. But you see some talented players out of the Ashtabula area as well. And Riverside was Lake County, but they had an exceptional year this year. Went to the playoffs, got their first playoff victory in school history, actually. And head coach and athletic director Dave Boers does a great job there. So,
if there is a difference, I would think that the Lake County schools probably have more kids to draw from.
Oh, well,
which could make a huge difference when you're fielding a team.
I just did a column with Menor's head coach, Steve Trevisano, and he was talking about, even with, because everyone's facing lower enrollment and a lot of football programs are seeing smaller numbers for a variety of reasons, but he said January 2nd, they had 116 people committed for weight room. Now you're talking about
Wow.
two-a-days don't start till August 1st.
Right.
And you have 116
Wow.
kids coming every day. I mean, that for most schools, regardless of the county, would be like a dream come true.
Now, Angelo, you graduated from Menor High School.
I did, yes.
And you have to be real proud of Mitch Trubisky of the Chicago
Yeah.
Bears. I'm sure you covered him in high school.
I got a chance to actually see him in the summer. He came back and started his first camp for the Menor Youth Football. Well, they've had the camp, but they've now given some of the namesake to Trubisky, and he did come back and participate and talk to the kids and did some drills. So that was pretty cool to see him at the field where he, earned his first stripes and then helping out the future Cardinals there. So now, and that was after his first season, and now he had an even better second season. Just he had the injury, but had some pretty big games. I know at one point was pretty statistically right on with Tom Brady for at least half of the year. So that's kind of amazing to think a kid that grew up around the corner is right up there with
Yeah.
the top quarterbacks.
Are you surprised by anything he's doing in the NFL?
I thought he was going to be very good. I didn't know how good, but I did think he wouldn't be a bust. I thought I wasn't one that wanted the Browns to draft a lot of quarterbacks over the previous years, but on that night, I wanted them to draft him because, can you just imagine? I know there's the excitement now after the fact with Baker Mayfield and going 7-8-1, but he would have brought such a spark just by being from Menard. He watched the Browns struggle his whole life as a kid. They were never good, really, while he was growing up. So I think the heart he would have had, not that he's not having heart for Chicago, but I think it would have been even so much more like, I'm going to try to help take this team that I watched struggle and now get them to succeed. So that would have been pretty cool. I was hoping it played out. It didn't happen, but he's doing awesome in Chicago, so you got to tip your hat to him.
Yeah, he sure is. I want to talk with you, of course, about the Menor Icebreakers and some Cleveland sports. But before we do, Angelo, Byron and I were talking about this, and just to get your thoughts, there seems to be a lot of frustrations and even to some extent some bitterness in the county about some teams not getting the coverage, or not only not getting the coverage, but some teams not playing each other for the county because we don't have that county league. What's your feelings on not having the local teams play each other as much as they should be, and do you think that will ever come back?
Well, I think with Edgewood and Lakeside both going to the CVC next year, it's closer.
Grand Valley too, right?
And, oh, yeah, you're right. Grand Valley is as well. But I definitely think they should be playing each other because now the Lakeside girls basketball team has improved this year. But last year, both them and Edgewood were pretty much, you could trade either one. They were very similar stance, struggling, trying to build the team. But even for that girls basketball game at Edgewood or Lakeside, it was a great crowd. 3 times, 4 times. If either of those teams was playing some team that traveled up from Youngstown that was a superior team. And that's when the two teams were struggling. So now if you take two teams that are good or even mediocre, you're going to draw a much better crowd. It also is going to be a lot better for the kids. I always thought it's one thing on Friday night for football if you're going to travel an hour and a half, which is still kind of excessive. But on a Tuesday night, and especially if you're going to play a team that may easily beat you, you're going to travel an hour and a half on a Tuesday night, and you have homework, projects, and tests, all to lose 62-15 and drive back and have that long bus ride thinking about it. That doesn't seem like it's a win-win. And how many parents are going to go out there, and what if the weather's bad? Because, during basketball season, all the snow and ice we get. So I definitely think they should be playing each other. Will it ever come back where it was?
Consensus is no, but I'd like to hear what you say.
Not in the near future, I think, but I do think going to the CVC is at least a step in the right direction. You're playing Perry, you're playing Harvey. I was just at Perry for a game the other night, and you see that they always played the Ashtabula schools. There was a football from the 20s, that had all the scores from the season on it, and one was between Perry and Ashtabula, and it's thinking, yeah, these schools are closer, they should be playing. And a lot more people take that trip for work and for entertainment and leisure, that simple trip down 90 East. Not as many people are traveling all the way into the heart of Youngstown. So you'll see people up in the Menor area on the weekend with Conneaut jackets, Lakeside jackets, Edgewood, Jefferson. I've seen Pontotoc Valley, and you'll see them pretty regularly. So I think there's a more comfortability, at least going that way to Lake County. But it would be nice to see. I think if they can't join the same conference, that the Edgewoods and the Lakesides should still play the Conneauts and the St. John's, at least to some degree in some sports, because even if it's not close or they're lower level, I think people do want that and miss that, and it's going to bring out a good crowd.
Angelo covers hockey now. I know absolutely nothing about it, so tell me about these Menor icebreakers that you're covering.
Well, Chuck, I didn't know much more about it than you did to start, to be honest.
That's all she would need if I got into hockey.
But I learned a lot quickly. So what happened was the Menor Icebreakers, they played their first game on October 27th of 2018. They were officially added to the Federal Hockey League, which is a 6-team league, equivalent to being like single A, Lake County captains for the Cleveland Indians. So you could relate to that as a big baseball fan.
I can relate to that. You're exactly right.
And the head coach, Ian Duncan, he played for the Bowling Green State University Falcons, was named to their All-Century team in 2000, and he played professionally for the Winnipeg Jets. But the way it kind of came about is I saw an article actually in the Lake County Tribune talking about the Icebreakers' first game coming. And I reached out to them and was originally going to maybe do PA announcing, but they saw I had play-by-play experience. And I've done that for basketball, football, baseball, but never for hockey. And they said, well, do you think it's something you'd be able to learn? I said, well, the broadcasting side I feel comfortable about, but the hockey, maybe if I dive into it. So I just started listening to other teams' broadcast of the FHL, going through NHL clips online. They have condensed 10-minute clips. And then, like our game day operations manager and some of the players that were around before getting on the rink, they gave me lots of great tips. And every game I just started adding more and more to a list of stuff and learning and looking up more and more and coming familiar with the lingo. And soccer helped because while not on ice, and I can't skate a lick at all, but they move kind of the same way. You go left to right, side to side. You go backwards to move forwards. So there was some familiarity there, and then it was kind of the speed of basketball. So I kind of thought, strategy-wise, it's kind of soccer with the speed of basketball, and then, of course, hockey's its own animal. Are you familiar with the old Cleveland radio host, Pete Franklin?
Oh, yes, very much so.
Well, Pete Franklin always said the two hardest things to do are hit a baseball and stop a moving puck flying in you at his goalie. And when I'm seeing it up close now, 12 to 15 home games into the season, you see, wow, how much talent it takes to you have to strap on skates, go very fast on ice, keeping an upright balance while people are trying to smash you and stop you and get you to fall over. And then you're the goalie and you're on skates and you're crouched over, you have all these equipment pads on, and you have laser discs flying at you, sometimes 60 times a game in these FHL games. So, but I've learned a lot of credit to the team for allowing me to learn on the go, and a lot of the guys backstage giving me tips. And it's fun, they play all their games at the Menor Civic Ice Arena. So you don't have to drive all the way downtown. Not that there's anything wrong with going to the Monsters game, but here you'll have free parking and you don't have to deal with any of the traffic. So they'll be playing this upcoming weekend. They go to the first place Carolina Thunderbirds, and they play they're from Winston-Salem. They're coming Friday, Saturday there, and then they come back Sunday to play the Thunderbirds to wrap up the 3-game series. And actually after this, I'm going to Esther's Sports Cards and Collectibles at the Ashtabula Town Square
You're a busy
Mall.
man.
Yeah, and the Icebreakers
you had
are
time
doing,
for me. That's
well, your show's great, but the Icebreakers are doing a team meet and greet there with the photo op and autograph signing, so that'll be pretty cool. But the Icebreakers, they're getting out of the community, and the fan base is starting to grow. We call them Fanatics because the mascot is a shark. They slammed the shark, and he'll be there tonight. But yeah, I'm learning a lot about hockey. If you would have told me in September that I would know as much, and I still have a lot to learn, but if you would have told me you would know some of the ins and outs of hockey even 1 month prior to the season, I would have said, well, I've done a lot of sports, but never hockey. And here we are now, 4 months into the season.
I may not know much about hockey, but I do know this about hockey broadcasters. You will certainly know when a goal is scored.
Oh, yeah.
They're pretty much all the same on that.
There is a lot of similarities there. And actually, originally, I was kind of treating it as a soccer goal because, again, I was pulling from what I know. So I had a little bit of a soccer influence on that as well. But it's amazing how fast the game goes. But one of the tips one of the players gave me, which was so very much appreciated because it saved me a lot of oxygen. In most sports, when there's substitutions, you call them out, right? So I was keeping up with, they call it on the change, when the people are coming in and out, substitutions. Well, I was keeping up with them all. I was able to do it, but he told me, he had listened to the broadcast, he said, you don't have to do that. In hockey, unless it's a big dramatic change, the substitutions are so frequent that you don't need to say checking into the game change. And I'm like, oh, thank you very much. Because I was able to do it, but it took a lot of extra wind power and energy to keep up with it because the line changes or the substitutions were happening so frequently. And when he did that, that saved me. So like I said, there have been a lot of people just giving me those little tips that have helped out a lot.
Angelo, I got a couple minutes left, so I want to talk a little bit about the Browns. Okay. You are a Browns fan, right?
Yes.
Is Baker Mayfield the real thing?
He's definitely exceeding expectations because I was not for taking a quarterback in this draft. I don't like being one of those people that says, oh yeah, I knew it, but when you didn't, when you said the opposite, I never said not to take him specifically, but I thought this year was sort of a roll of the dice. There was 4 quarterbacks, and if you asked anybody at any given time, they were, take Allen for this, take Rosen for this, take Mayfield for this, take Darnold for this. And I heard arguments and then there were people saying take Lamar Jackson for this. So really you could throw in 5 quarterbacks and they all, win in the first round. So I thought they had flip-flopped it, to be honest. I thought they should have taken Trubisky last year because he was the surefire guy going in the top, and that there was still defensive linemen like Myles Garrett, with Chubb, or I was high on the few offensive linemen out of Notre Dame. So I thought they could kind of do it in reverse. So I think, in my opinion, Baker has exceeded the expectations from where I saw it. I didn't think anyone was going to rise to the top of the pack, but you never know because I always remember, Derek Anderson took us to a 10-6 season, and
07?
Yes, 07, I believe, and but quarterbacks' tendencies, everyone has their own tendencies, are then picked up because they always say the biggest change from college to pro is the speed of the defense. So now, after you've given everyone a year to read what are Baker Mayfield's tendencies, or anyone's, what are Trubisky's tendencies, they have to then adapt. So I think the next couple years will officially show where Mayfield stands. But as far as a rookie season, I would say would have exceeded my expectations.
You think he's a quarterback that can get the team into the playoffs?
Into the playoffs, yes. Super Bowl, I don't know. Mm-hmm. That's not a knock on him, but like I said, I think we have to see the speed of the NFL's defenses up against him after knowing his tendencies for a year, for the next couple of years to see that. And they need more puzzle pieces still, which is why I went around building the team in my head the last couple of drafts a different way, because I think we would have a more full team, but we wouldn't have Baker that way. But could he take you to the Super Bowl? Possibly. Not with what is currently in place. But it's a waiting time. You know what's crazy, though? Here's something to think about. You know the Meatloaf song, 2 Out of 3 Ain't Bad? Mm-hmm. Ever since the Cavs debuted, I can't think of the year it was in the 70s.
I think it was 1970.
Okay. There's never been all 3 Cleveland teams at the same time that were really good. We are 2 Out of 3 Ain't Bad should be the song, because now look, The Cavs just 2 years ago were dominant, and the Indians were on Game 9 of their eventual long game winning streak at that point, and ended up going to Game 7. And so the Cavs and Indians were at their best maybe they've ever been in most of our lifetimes. But the Browns were as low as can low get. Now all of a sudden the Browns show a pulse and a little bit of life.
Yeah.
And the Cavs are 9-40.
Yeah.
Now, rest to be seen about the Indians.
They're sort of like in the middle
but
right now.
if you go back throughout all the time, they've never, at least from what I've been able to gather, had all three at the same time.
Yeah. Favorite Cleveland team? Do you have one?
I would
Indians, or
always
Cavs?
say Browns before. I have fond memories of each at different times. I used to always watch all the old 90s Cavs games with my dad. Like, we would watch every single one, the Brad Daugherty, Mark Price. So that Cavs team is very fond. The Browns are starting to be fun for the first time since the Eric Mangini days, at least. And then the Indians, I got into baseball by listening to Tom Hamilton, I think, paints the picture.
Is there anybody any better?
Well, in fact, I don't think so, because he paid homage to Herb Score by saying, hi again, everybody. This is me.
Yeah.
Well, I start every Man or Icebreakers game on our stream, not from the corner of the Indians, but I say from the corner of Munson and Civic Center Boulevard.
There you
as
go.
an homage to him, because he actually kind of got me into it. I wasn't huge into baseball, but when you listen to him paint not
Yeah.
only the picture of the game, but I remember there was a game against the Rays last year, and I don't even remember the player's name, but he told me so much about the history of the guy that at least at the time I was invested, and when I got home I had to look up this guy's story because I was invested in this guy's personal story. And you don't get that coming through, I don't think, on the TV broadcast as much. They have to follow a lot more scripts and everything, but he's a wonderful broadcaster.
Angelo Velotta, this has been great.
It went by quick again.
I hope you can sit down with me again in the near future and we can talk more sports.
Awesome, Chuck, and I appreciate you having me on. You guys have a great show here, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. Angelo Velotta, my guest today on Around the Town with Chuck.